Hi, and welcome to Campus Mortgage, the mortgage industry's leading provider of underwriting, processing, quality control, servicing, and closing training. Before we get started, please take a moment to read Campus Mortgage's disclaimer and keep in mind the information contained in this video is time sensitive and subject to change without notice. Now let's get started. Today, we will be discussing part 2 of a 3-part video series which covers using owner-occupied guidelines to purchase a home for your parents. In part 1 of the series, we discussed the different occupancy types, the difference between an owner-occupied and a non-owner-occupied transaction, and we began to discuss the owner-occupancy exception that both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac allows for conventional mortgages. That exception being that if a child wants to purchase a home for their parents, they can do that even though they will not be living in the home and still call it an owner-occupied transaction. So now let's focus on what Freddie Mac says about this special borrower exception for owner occupancy. Freddie Mac issued a bulletin, bulletin number 2018-15. This bulletin added special occupancy eligibility to their selling guide, and that special eligibility is for a child to purchase for their parent as an owner-occupied transaction. On your screen, you'll see where you can locate this bulletin from Freddie Mac, which includes their stance and their requirements for this occupancy exception. But simply put, Freddie Mac states that if we can document the parents of the borrower will be the owner occupants of the home, we can use this owner occupancy exception. So in reading the bulletin, again, a child can purchase for their parents as an owner-occupied transaction as long as we can document that the parents will be the owner-occupants of the home. Its simplest way to do that would be a signed or notarized statement from the parents and the borrower indicating the occupancy intentions. Lenders may also look for additional documentation. They may be looking for evidence that the parents are vacating their current property, their current primary residence, in order to support that the subject property would become the parent's primary residence. So you always want to make sure you follow your lender guidance. But again, just wanted to point out what Freddie Mac states, and that's simply that we must document the borrower is purchasing a home that their parents will use as their primary residence in order to take advantage of the owner-occupied guidelines. One thing to keep in mind, a common question that you may get is, how do we complete a 1003 for this? If you'll know, in the declaration section on a 1003, there is a question that says, do you intend to occupy the property as your primary residence? So in this example, the borrower is actually the child purchasing for the parent who does not intend to occupy as their primary residence. However, if we're using this exception, both Fannie and Freddie state that our borrower should indicate yes on their 1003. So again, we're treating this as an owner-occupied transaction. Okay, Freddie Mac was pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Document that the parents will be occupying the home as their primary residence. Fannie Mae has a few extra caveats to this owner occupancy exception. So let's take a look at those. One thing Fannie Mae states is that a borrower can take advantage of this owner occupancy exception if their parents are unable to work. So again, required documentation will vary per lender. It's important to remember that we can't ask for specific medical information for our borrowers or their parents, but some examples of when a parent is unable to work: maybe they're out on disability, or maybe there are health reasons why that parent cannot work. So a lender is going to be looking for some sort of verification of that information. If the parents are receiving disability, A disability award letter would be perfectly acceptable documentation to show that the parent is unable to work. Maybe just a general statement from a physician stating that the borrower does not work or is unable to work, or maybe the borrower recently left the workforce for a reason, and we could get verification of that from a prior employer. Another reason that Fannie Mae will allow a borrower to take advantage of this exception is if their parents do not make sufficient income to qualify for a mortgage on their own. So keep in mind, again, this is a borrower qualifying for a mortgage on a home that their parents will occupy. So if the parents do not make enough income to qualify on their own, obviously they can't get that mortgage, and the borrower can then get the mortgage for them, still using the same owner-occupied guidelines. So what Fannie Mae says is that the parent must either be unable to work or the parents do not make sufficient income to qualify on their own. The lack of income could be from various reasons. Some of the most common reasons would be, the parents are retired and they're on limited fixed income, or possibly there was a loss of spouse's income that brought down that household income. So now the child wants to qualify for the mortgage for their parent. To show a loss of income, that's something that could easily be documented. You could get tax transcripts, so you can execute a 4506T for the parent, or request pay stubs, W-2s, again, any benefit awards letters, anything to show or support that the parents would not qualify income-wise on their own, and that is why the borrower wants to take advantage of this owner occupancy exception. So Fannie Mae has a couple little caveats. You may need a bit more documentation for a Fannie Mae transaction, but not anything too crazy. And again, you always want to make sure you follow your lender requirements. And that concludes part 2 of this 3-part video series. For more tips, videos, and for a full list of courses offered by Campus Mortgage, please visit our website at www.campusmortgage.org. Thank you, and as always, make it a great day.